Well, everyone, welcome to Everything Teams Phone Live. It is our June 9th edition, and we've got a special guest with us today, Brandon. Why don't you introduce our special guest today, Brandon? I always do
Yeah.
it. You should probably do it today.
Coming all the way from Microsoft, we got Doug Kline with us. Welcome to
Doug
the show,
Kline.
Doug.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
Now, I don't know where you're at located wise. Like, I don't know what state you're in. I just know that you've got the same living room background that some other guests have used. So now I'm really curious. Like, does Microsoft hire people and you have like the same house to work from?
Well,
that's a joke, of course.
What they do is when they hire us, we get a free house as part of it, but it's a model
Nice.
home, so we all get the same. No, I'm in Dallas, Texas. So
Okay.
we're just outside of Dallas, Texas. Microsoft has an office here, and it's called Las Colinas, but it's technically Irving, Texas. So
I like it. Isn't there some horses over there? Some statue of horses in Las Colinas?
There is.
Something like that, right?
Yeah, yes, there is a famous horse statue down in the area they call the Lakes.
There we go.
The Lakes area of Las Colinas, and kind of our little downtown area.
You know what? It's been a long time. I've been to Las Colinas before. I have actually been there. And so I think I'm familiar with exactly where you're at. So that's where you live, Las Colinas. All right. That's a nice area. Nice area.
Well,
yeah,
Doug,
it's nice, peaceful. Yeah.
I'll have to look you up. One of our Operator Connect data centers is in Dallas. So next time I'm down there, I'll have to give you a ping.
You thinking live hands there? You thinking hands on the ground there, Brandon, is what you're thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking, hey, Doug, here's a badge. Go into the data center for me.
Hey, I'm thinking excuse to go get some barbecue and some great Mexican food, because
there we go.
Definitely has it for sure.
Speaking of excuses, yesterday was about as good as it gets. Whenever you spend a working day playing golf, right? So one of our partners had a golf tournament. We sponsor the golf tournament. We have all these hats that we sponsor for all their golf tournaments. And yesterday I took a drive and went and played golf for, I don't know, it's nice 18 holes, nice leisurely afternoon. I'm like, I get that a lot of people do that for their work, they're taking customers out or whatever. And I get that people do that. I don't do that very often. This is predominantly where the work gets done for me. It's like, in my command center. But spending the day out on a golf course, it's pretty dang nice. That's pretty cool. Anyway.
Yeah. Worst places to be, that's for sure. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, let's do this. We've got a lot to talk about today. If you're listening out there and you're interested in understanding how SIP Gateway plays into your deployment strategy, and this is really important for those organizations that have existing cloud PBX solutions, even some physical on-prem solutions in place today. The reason that it's really important is because we're going to talk about devices and a device strategy. We're going to talk about 3P IP ending. We're going to talk about how you can enable some of the infrastructure that you have today, and why is that important from a financial perspective. If you can deploy Microsoft Teams, and we already know that Microsoft Teams saves you money on an OpEx level when you compare it to the different resources that you need to operate an on-prem system, for example. And if you have any questions about that, if you want to understand where I'm getting that detailed information from, it's the Forrester Total Economic Impact Report. Let me know in the comments below, and we will certainly get that report to you, because it's important to understand how we're coming to those numbers. Now, if you do have a cloud PBX solution out today, and you've got, if you've got a couple thousand devices sitting out there, maybe they're Polycom devices, maybe they're Yealink devices, Doug Kline has got some cool information for you so that you as an organization don't have to spend any more capital to deploy Microsoft Teams Phone. Doug, am I right?
You are absolutely right.
That's fantastic. Okay. Brandon, here's a couple of updates for Microsoft Teams for some house cleaning purposes. Then we're going to get right into it, but you want to go over a few of these things?
Do we have a slide that I can look at?
Oh man, I'm sitting here presenting
I'm like, what?
To myself.
I don't know what we're talking about here. I'm looking at two other guys on a screen.
Very good. There we go. I stole this from Empowering Cloud. Tom Arbuthnot and crew, thank you very much. You totally stole it from you this morning, so thank you. Always appreciate Empowering Cloud. If you need to learn anything about Microsoft Teams and what's happening, they've got these great videos that show you all sorts of updates. So yes, it's very cool. Empowering.cloud. Head over there and take a look. So there's the slide, Brandon.
Yeah. Okay. So I think obviously the top one is kind of a interesting one because I know on our show what have we been broadcasting as daily active users on Teams up until this point? Like 200 and some.
280 million. And then I think the last one we did hit the 300 million, but really just kind of pushing it
Yeah.
out now.
So yeah, 300 million active users is a pretty wild number. You know, you're not many platforms are above that number. I don't think, even from a social media perspective. I mean, obviously, you talk about social media and you start pushing that 1 billion mark, but 300 million in business productivity, that's huge. And that excites me because it just tells me that, you know, from even an external productivity perspective, man, I can reach into a lot of my business partnerships instantly and seamlessly. So pretty cool there. Other big one is Copilot. You know, I think Copilot is going to redefine, I mean, hugely redefine business productivity as far as note taking, organizing, and scheduling. And, you know, the examples are endless on what you can probably go do, even maybe out of the box with Copilot. I don't know if you've got other opinions, Rick,
Yeah, Doug, have you
or
tried
Doug.
Copilot? Are you on a special Copilot coming from
I
Microsoft?
wish. So we don't even have it yet. I was able to see somebody last week who had some elements of Copilot. They were in the office and they showed me a couple things. They showed me a chat recap. So in other words, I was chatting with him and, you know, he was wondering where I was in the office and whatnot. And I told him, and then I actually invited him to lunch. And so later on he showed me and he said, hey, you know, Copilot, recap my conversation with Doug today. And it actually gave a couple bullet points of like, Doug described where he was in the building. Doug invited you to lunch here. Like it was pretty neat. So saw that, did see the PowerPoint generation. So he was able to go into PowerPoint and actually tell PowerPoint to create a Teams premium slide deck for his customer. It created about 6 slides. You know, it did exactly what it was asked to do. So it was actually pretty neat. Again, it's still a developmental thing. We still have a long road until it's fully GA, but it's pretty powerful so far. And I would encourage anybody, just go out to Bing and play around with the ChatGPT integration of Bing, because that's available to the public, and you don't even have to necessarily pay for it, right? There should be some elements of it that you can gain access to, and that's some pretty cool stuff. So definitely go out there, play around, get used to it. It is going to be revolutionary for sure.
How impressive is it that, and to me, this is impressive when an organization, I mean, you know, you have the chat GPT sort of run out in, what was it, November of last year, right?
Mm.
November of last year. How impressive is it that Microsoft has taken it on, injected it into so many different business tools at the pace that they're injecting it into I mean, it's just astonishing to me. And to have products that are somewhat, I wouldn't call them finished. Obviously it's developmental stuff, but boy, like to really put it to use from a business productivity perspective, it is the most, I think in business, it's one of the most groundbreaking things that a company could do at a speed that I've never seen this before. When something comes out, you know, but you expect it to just wait a while before it filters on down to you, right? To where it really means anything to you. But this is something that I literally think this year, 2023, you're going to see, you know, massive business productivity take place in such a short amount of time, a short time frame. It's going to be crazy cool.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to paraphrase, so not to try to put these exact words in Microsoft's CEO's mouth, and I'm probably going to not do it justice, but I think it was in the big announcement of Copilot, he said something to the effect of, you know, the intent of Copilot and the intent of AI is not to replace jobs as much as it is to take the mundane out of day-to-day work. And I think that's what Copilot's going to do, is it's how many of us dread, I got to start from scratch on a PowerPoint. I've got to start from scratch on summarizing agendas or work notes or tasks. Copilot's just going to come in and take all of that mundane stuff out and really streamline it for us. That's what excites me.
I often compare it when I talk to customers. It's like Power Automate. If you're familiar with the Power Platform and Power Automate, Power Automate can do millions of things, right? But one of the most powerful things it does is get rid of those mundane tasks that people do that they don't even realize they do throughout the day, right? And it could be something as simple as when an invoice comes in, take the number off the invoice and place it somewhere, right? Well, have Syntax, and which, by the way, Syntax is getting Copilot integration too, right? But take SharePoint Syntax paired with a Power Automate flow and suddenly ingest that stuff automatically. And that's just, first thing, it takes away human error, right? Number one. But number two, it frees up the humans to really focus on what's important, right?
I love that. I love that. I think that's fantastic. Android 12 on MTR on Meet Microsoft Teams Rooms. What do you think about that, Doug? That seems pretty cool. I mean, you got Android as an operating system now for a lot of devices out there. No big PC to kind of not lug around, but even I've got a Yealink video bar of UVC40 somewhere in my office here, and I've got a little silver box that I tow along with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That'll be nice to have an Android operating system to kind of cleanly and easily deploy. I mean, just compact room devices.
Yeah, this is actually a bigger deal than a lot of people think. So I don't know if you guys have talked to it on previous episodes, but we've changed some of our room system licensing. Well, maybe I'm giving a topic for the next one.
There you go.
But there used to be the standard license and the premium license, right? The premium came with this, the premium portal, which was a new room management portal, and it worked phenomenally with Windows room systems. But the Android room systems, it worked, but it wasn't great. Why? Because we don't get a lot of telemetry from Android, right? If you think about it, Android was developed as a mobile operating system, and now it's starting to show up everywhere. It's in phones, and it's in room systems, not to mention even in household items are starting to use Android, right? And so Microsoft and other providers out there are working with the Android teams to start to pull more detailed telemetry from those devices so that they can be better managed. We can get better logging. So every one of these new releases of an Android OS is going to mean a significant step forward in the administration and management experience, not to mention the actual use of the product, but from administrators that actually have to manage and keep an eye on these things and are using these new portals that Microsoft's coming out with. We're just going to get more and more telemetry out of it, which is going to create a much better experience for everyone.
Man, that's awesome. That's good stuff. Brandon, do we want to touch on any of these, or
I was going to say, I mean, I think the 3PIP, that's going to be a topic in later slides. Others are interesting, but probably rabbit trails for our topic that we want to talk about today.
I think we dive into it, man. I think we just get right to it. I'm going to throw this up here.
You're going to put me on the spot, make me intro myself, huh?
I'm going to, you know what, Doug, look, I see the motorcycle stuff. I see the hockey stuff, and we just got a lot to talk about. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? So everyone that's listening, the millions of viewers we have are listening, so they know what's coming at them right now. There's a whole heap of knowledge coming at them right now.
Okay, awesome. Well, my name is Doug Kline. I am a modern work technology specialist here at Microsoft, right? So I essentially cover the productivity stack. So I talk to customers, I help the account teams, specifically I like to educate customers and help them get through roadblocks to make sure the products make the most for them. I have been at Microsoft about 4 years, but I've actually been in the ecosystem of Microsoft for about 15. And so I've been part of the partner community, and I'm a voice guy. I've been doing voice since 1997. I'm actually an old Nortel person. I could really bore everybody on the podcast today with the history of how I got from Nortel to Microsoft. It's actually kind of funny, but yeah, I had a chance to kind of jump out of Nortel 3 months before bankruptcy. So I actually got out of there probably a good
Perfect timing.
Yeah, perfect timing. And I got over into the partner community, and it was an interesting thing because to come from the traditional world of voice where, voice was done, H323 and G711 and all this kind of stuff, and then suddenly come over to the Microsoft world where there's dynamic codecs and it's not necessarily a physical phone on the desk first approach, right? It was pretty interesting, but as we've seen, and as the number you showed with the 300 million monthly active users, it was obviously the right step that Microsoft took. The world is embracing it, and it's been a fun journey. So I have a little tidbit. I've jumped all over the place. I've worked in every time zone. I could list out. I think I've actually moved 12 times throughout my career, and so I'm one of
Wow.
those people that and it was actually heavily Nortel. That
Okay.
anytime they needed somebody to go somewhere, they're like, "Hey, do you want to go here? Here's a pile of money for relocation and a raise." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll go." So I so I kind of jumped around, and I actually the hardest one was the Mountain Time Zone. I did live in Denver for years, but that was one place I tried to go. I'm a big skier, and obviously I play hockey based on the picture there. And but it was tough to get into Denver because I think only until recently Denver has really become a major market. It was always kind of almost like a secondary market for a long time. So, but yep, now I'm in Dallas, and obviously I play hockey. Well, up until Saturday, I played hockey. If you can see, my arm's in a sling. I separated my shoulder, so we'll see if that ended my hockey career. But I do ride motorcycle. That picture of me on my motorcycle there was actually just about 3 weeks ago taken. And so
Is that is that a 1250? Is that a BMW 1250 right there?
that is a 1250 GS Adventure. Yeah.
Look at
So
that. That's awesome. Now, did you paint the yellow? Because I have not seen one factory yellow like that with
so
the
yeah. So the funny story on that. Well, you're going to get me going on these.
see,
So
see.
that was bought in the middle of the pandemic. Everybody, like everything else, manufacturing numbers were cut. And so that's actually a 40th anniversary color scheme, the Bumblebee yellow and black. And I couldn't get one in Dallas. The dealers that had them had people waiting in line to get them. So I literally bought it from a dealer out in Huntsville, Alabama. Literally bought it over the phone without even seeing it. Of course, it was new. It's a pretty safe purchase. So I flew the airplane out there one way, picked up the bike, and drove it home, which was kind of neat. I tell everybody, if you ride motorcycle, it's a great way to purchase the bike because you get used to it very quickly because you're stuck on it for a couple of days. And since then, I've been kind of doing so. The yellow bars were actually powder coated. They're normally silver, so I've been doing some little accents and stuff, just like your typical motorcycler. You have to kind of customize it and make it your own. So that's my bike. If I ever do the lifelong dream of like stopping working and disappearing on a motorcycle for a while and go around the world or something, that's the one to do it. Who knows if I'll do it, but it's,
That
it's a
is
bucket list.
fantastic. I love that. Motorcycles. So I'm a private pilot. So motorcycles and airplanes. It's like it's just it's a freeing experience. And if you don't ride a motorcycle or fly an airplane for that matter, you just don't understand how liberating it is to get out on a piece of machinery and really just sort of experience sort of outside. It's pretty cool. I mean, that's
It
an
is.
awesome bike. I looked at buying one during the pandemic, and no one had them. And you were on waiting lists. Another buddy of mine bought one, and I was too scared to do it anyway because I was like, do I ride enough for a $35,000 bike? I just don't know if I do or not. So I didn't pull the trigger on that. But anyway, Doug, that's awesome. I'm so happy to have you on the show, Doug. I think we're going to have a bunch of topics to go through and talk about, but this is cool. Well, welcome to the show, and let's kick things off, and let's talk about what we're here to talk about. So this is planning SIP gateway, and this is so important for people to understand because people just don't even understand. And when I talk about mainstream doesn't even understand yet that you can plug in normal phones to Microsoft Teams because everyone's like, well, I don't use a PC here because I've got not a storefront, but maybe it's a retail location, or maybe it's something, in a PC. Everyone, you can use a normal phone with Microsoft Teams phone. And Doug's going to tell us what we've got going on and how to plan for it and go. So Doug,
Absolutely.
What do you got?
Well, for the first thing, let's go to the next slide there. And the first thing, why are we talking about this? Well, we are seeing the end of 3-pip phones, or three third-person IP phones, right? Or third-party IP phones, I should say, is what it meant. And so what is 3-pip? Well, 3-pip, when Teams came out, we had a lot of customers that, of course, we wanted to attract them and get them into the cloud. And our previous version of our UC platform was Skype for Business, right? And so there were thousands upon thousands of phones out there that were running the Skype for Business client on the device. Probably the most popular phone was the Polycom VVX series. Saw them everywhere. And so what could we do to make these phones not have to be completely forklifted and thrown out and replaced? Because as you're aware, one of the most expensive parts of changing a phone system is often having to replace all the endpoints, right? And phones today can be $300, $400, $500 a piece, right? And so that's a major investment. Not to mention a lot of companies that have accounting principles and whatnot, and they depreciate their inventory of hardware. Maybe they haven't fully depreciated these items. So what we did is we came up with this approach using what's here, the 3-pip, is we allowed Skype for Business phones to register against Microsoft Teams, right? And so that was 3-pip, right? Well, we announced a couple of years ago that, hey, that's it. We now have Teams native phones. We also have SIP Gateway, which is what we're here to talk about. And so we got the word out that, hey, 3-pip is not going to be supported forever. July 2023, we're pulling the plug on it. Well, we are now 6-7 weeks away from that date. And so, for example, the division of the company I'm in, we are doing active call downs of customers to let them know, hey, you have 3-pip phones. You need to make a decision. Either purchase new Teams native phones, which is awesome, go to a headset only model, or of course, what we're here to talk about today is leverage the SIP Gateway service. So if we kind of jump to the next slide there, what is SIP Gateway, right? Well, I won't read down through all this, but what essentially it is it allows the ability of generic SIP endpoints to register against user accounts inside of Microsoft Teams. And the great part about this, it doesn't cost anything. So anybody who has the Teams phone standard license assigned to them, so in other words, if you're using Teams as a phone system, you have to have the Teams phone standard license somehow, right? You're enabled through policy to have SIP devices registered against you. And we'll actually show that a little bit later on. And this also works for what used to be called common area phones. Now we call them shared device licenses, right? So if you have situations like conference phones, lobby phones, even receptionist area, things like that, you can make use of this. And so it is a really, really great way to make use of your existing investment. But it is important to call out, not every SIP device works with SIP Gateway. There are a specific list of certified vendors and models that we work with. So we don't just work with any SIP loaded phone, right? There are specific models, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay.
All right, very good. Well, I'll tell you the Yealink and the Cisco and the Poly, I know they're in the list there, and I'll tell you those are the ones we see on the street all the time. If we're not battling a Cisco on-prem system, we're battling a former RingCentral customer's devices, right? So they're sitting on a Poly or something like that. So it's you've got Microsoft has all the right ones in there for us from a mass perspective, right? From a numbers perspective, it's what we run into.
For sure. Yeah. Who's it for? Okay. So I had talked about this, the existing Skype for Business PIP phones, right? So you could flash those phones. And this is important to call out. So let's use the example of the VVX phones, right? The Poly phones. Poly phones literally had a specific Skype for Business firmware that the phone ran. And so you would need to flash the phone to actually do the generic SIP load. And there is minimum, firmware load levels that you have to be on and whatnot. One of the nice things actually Poly does is Poly actually has a cloud service that when the phone boots up, it automatically talks to their configuration servers, and you can create kind of policies and whatnot so that when the phone provides its MAC address, it'll recognize it as part of what policy it needs to get. And you can actually point the phone to Microsoft entirely from their cloud. So Poly has done a really great job of making it very easy. So the other thing is, we're going to, you're jumping ahead of the Poly.
No, sorry.
Too excited.
Accidental.
That's okay. Yep. Who else is this important to? Organizations with other existing, you had mentioned like RingCentral or some, many Cisco call manager customers, right? Or unified communication managers, I should use the right term. Cisco phones are expensive. They really are.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to just throw those into a closet or try to sell them, try to make use of them. Now, again, I'll talk a little bit about that. Cisco, you got to be important that Cisco, I think, uses, I think Skinny is their kind of messaging protocol that they use. You do have to make sure you go to their specific SIP load, and you'd have to get to whatever licensing is needed. But you could absolutely repurpose those phones and get them to work against Teams. DECT phones, we actually have two companies that make DECT phones that work with Teams. By the way, DECT is, the long range wireless capabilities. And then this is a big one. So this last bullet point is actually the newest thing. This is fairly recent. We now have the ability to tie in ATAs, analog telephony adapters, right? And so what are these? Well, anybody who knows Teams has, if you happen to need localized analog ports for, say, like alarm systems, elevator lines, paging systems, things like that, you used to have to deploy some form of direct routing. Well, now you don't have to do that. We have 3 companies that have certified ATAs, right, analog telephony adapters, available to work with Microsoft Teams SIP Gateway. So that's huge. That's a big one.
That
And
is
then
huge.
I-
We're
Yep.
going through that. Like we're actually testing some devices, Brandon, right now, specifically for this example right here. So I
Yeah,
mean, that's
Yeah, so two things, and Jason Wait, who's obviously watching, thanks for stealing my thunder. I guess
One of
you
my
just need
peers.
you just need to come take my place. No, the Cisco, like I've got a Cisco 8861, I think, sitting right over my shoulder on my coffee bar here behind me. And what I'll say is that thing's been forklifted 7 ways to Sunday. The last place it lived was on Zoom phone. It's now on Teams phone. But to Jason's point, Cisco anymore is SIP, and as long as you're on their specific MPP firmware, there's literally nothing you need to do besides provision it to Teams phone. And then lastly, to your point, Garcia, yep, I'm probably going to get a knock on my door while we're on the call, delivering me a couple analog ATAs to start testing FXS. So
I'm going to ask you a
stoked about
question.
that.
I'm going to ask you a question, Brandon. How many clicks did it take for you to activate that Cisco phone on your Teams infrastructure there?
Oh, shoot. You are putting me on the spot because I don't remember, but it was like
3. Come on, man. I remember those things. It's like, he's like, he provisioned it. And one day he calls me, he's like, Rick, it's like 3 clicks. 3 clicks. I had this, the Cisco just lit up in 3 clicks. The Cisco phone's connected to my Teams user. He's like, that was amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Microsoft's done a good job with that.
Yeah, they did. I'm actually going to call out one more thing that wasn't provided here, and this is something that kind of popped into my head a few hours before our call here. Another thing that SIP Gateway is really good for is if you're changing from your kind of classic, everybody has a phone on the desk kind of approach to communications, and you're going to Teams, a lot of times leaders want to make the decision, we really want to get everybody into a soft client, and we want to really have soft client with a headset, kind of like what I'm talking on today. But if you were to poll your organization, probably 95% of your users will say, from my dead dying hand, you're taking my phone away from me. It has been, it's often considered kind of just an area of comfort. They feel that their desk isn't complete unless there's a phone there. And so SIP Gateway allows you to use those existing phones to bridge over to Microsoft Teams without the expense of purchasing phones, until the users start to realize the power of the desktop client to where, maybe I could get by with just a headset. Right?
No, that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens because I moved into this house last summer. Okay. And I've always had a LAN and a PoE switch handy. And I've always had 10 phones on my desk because I'm the phone guy. I love this stuff. Right. So I'm like, this is great. I moved into this house and I'm like, I don't have a LAN cable here. I'm gonna have to go run a cable and I'll get my PoE switch here. And I'm like, let me skip that because I've got other things to do in the house. Right. So I skipped it. And I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks go by and I'm sitting here going, the desk is so clean without a pigtail cord kind of dangling around. I've got my own one now for the headset here, but without that kind of hanging around, without a big box taking up the visual screen time, the screen sort of space that it takes up when it's sitting on. It's nice without a phone. And I'm I sell phones. It's what we do here at G12. I mean, not just sell phones, but service. And I'm just like, I don't think you need these physical devices.
I'm gonna say one thing worse that's gonna maybe make people cringe. And I know I've met Jason. And Jason might cringe. He might laugh. He might agree. I don't know. We'll see. But the and maybe Doug, I don't know so much your opinion about this, but we, from a technology perspective, we have this tendency, especially us old legacy voice guys, we have this tendency where we have this creature comfort almost in it's got to be plugged in. I have I have been wireless for probably the last 6 years of my career. And I've had multiple people say, "What's wrong with you? That's not stable. That's not reliable." And I just smile and go, "I've done it for 6 years and had almost no issues." And I'm a fan. Back to the whole phone thing. I don't want a phone. I don't want another plug I have to trace and another device I have to keep track of. I just want one client, one machine, and to Rick's point, I want a clean desk. Now, if you saw my desk, you would laugh because it's far from clean.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
I'll
right.
actually call out, speaking of phones, and I mean, the point is, let the user have the device that they feel best with. I'll often tell customers, look, if you're in a closed door office, have some type of phone device, because more than likely they're using a lot of speakerphone, right? But if people that are in cube land, right, headsets just make a lot of sense. And but there's actually a company, Yealink, you mentioned them earlier, right?
Yeah.
They actually make a USB based phone device. So it looks like a phone, it feels like a phone, it acts like a phone, it provides the comfort to the user. It's a phone, but it's USB driven. So it's actually running off the desktop client. So it's this kind of great way. It's awesome with this hybrid hoteling world that a lot of companies are kind of embracing, where you sit down at a desk, you plug in the docking station, and boom, the phone starts working when Teams comes up. And so there's a lot of ways that Microsoft can provide the communication to the user.
Very good. Very good. Let's knock over to the next slide here. Requirements.
Yeah. So you must have a SIP supported device. That's really the big thing that I'll call out, hence what the picture has. I think that's actually a poly device, actually, looking at it there. And so also you have to be licensed for what Microsoft used to kind of call, we don't use this term too much anymore, but enterprise voice enabled, right? So you have to have either if you're a user, you have to be licensed for the Teams Phone standard capability. If you're a non-user device or non-person tied device, you'd have to have that shared device license. And then, of course, you have to have some type of carrier connection to the PSTN, right? Microsoft Calling Plans, Operator Connect, even like direct routing, right? Any of those, you have to provide the suite of enablements to allow enterprise voice enabled for the user, so that the device can then be used once you flip the SIP gateway service on in the policy. Okay. And then it is worth calling out, if you have any government customers out there, anybody who is on GCC High or DoD, it's not available as of yet.
So curious question, Doug, is it on the roadmap to go GCC High and DoD?
We hear it is. We hear they're working on it. And that's about all we hear.
Okay.
So it's one of those things that I have a lot of GCC High customers. I align to manufacturing, so there's a lot of people with government contracts that have to be on GCC High. And so they often probably get tired of the not yet answer that we give them a lot. Yeah. So we tend to develop things for the commercial tenant, and then the developers have to do the extra work or whatever requirements to get it to meet the FedRAMP requirements and stuff. So we're told they're trying to get to it, but nothing yet.
Last curious question. Okay. Do you get asked about roadmap support for the Viper phones in kind of the DoD environment? The Viper brand phones? I ask selfishly because we might have some.
I haven't been asked that, and yeah, I'm familiar with Viper. Yeah.
Okay. No, we don't have to belabor that.
I actually got asked that, probably about 2 years ago. That's okay. Well, maybe we talk offline. I'll see what I can find out.
Yeah. No, yeah. All good.
Okay. I will not read down through this slide. Yeah. Hey, so we got the big ones. Phones and the vendors that make them.
You got the big ones in there, though. Cisco, Poly, Yealink. I mean, again, I like to speak. Brandon's our CTO. I'm the business guy, right? And I look at this and I go, who do we run into on the street? We run into Cisco, we run into Poly, we run into Yealink.
Yep.
And so you got for us and
ironically Avaya, but we just laugh at them if they say Avaya. We're like, okay,
you're still on that? Oh, I'm so sorry.
three bankruptcies later. Okay. Sorry, I shouldn't be trash talking.
There's nothing wrong with a little bit of that. Come on, it makes it fun. All right. Supported features. This is an important slide, Doug. This is an important slide because I've got a question for you. Go for it.
Yes, so this is important. I won't go through all of these. It does what we consider the core functionalities of it you'd expect from a phone: on hook, off hook, DTMF tones, voicemail, voicemail light indicator, obviously forwarding, do not disturb, call transfer, 911, though there is a disclaimer there, not necessarily all devices do full function of dynamic E911. But it's, again, the idea is, and this is important to call out, is if you're coming from a legacy PBX, say for example, you're coming from a Cisco and you have Cisco phones, there will probably be things that the phone did from Cisco that it won't do with SIP gateway. So it's just important to understand what it does so that your users can be educated, so there's not some mismatch of expectations when suddenly they switch over to the new solution.
Okay. Here comes the question for you, Doug. You're thinking cap
Okay.
on. Are you ready? I've got a customer. It's a brand everyone will know. It's a retail organization spread through all over the country. Thousands and thousands of users and hundreds of locations. And in their retail store, they've got IP phones. I think they're Polycom phones. And their question was, and they asked this is literally a couple of days ago, how can we get Call Park to work on SIP gateway? So that was the question. Or is there a solution to mirror something like that? So if you thinking cap on, these guys are in a retail store and they've got 10 phones in every retail store, and they work on Call Park. I mean, someone answers somewhere, they put it on Call Park and they all run around the store, and someone picks it up at a different location if they need to page somebody, and somebody picks it up at a different location. So that's the scenario. What's the solution, Doug? And Jason, you can be his lifeline if he needs a lifeline here. You guys can
I may call
collaborate.
because I'm not sure if there is one. So we don't call out Call Park, right? You can see on the slide it's not called out.
To my knowledge, this is just speaking for us trying to solve for it. To my knowledge, it is not supported on
yeah, it's not supported in SIP gateway. Obviously, we have it with Teams native phones, right? So that might be a scenario where we might need to say, hey, maybe you need to think about putting in Teams native phones for this, because I can't think of a scenario, and I'm usually pretty creative, and I can't think of a scenario where we could get Call Park to work without. I mean, I can tell you things come to light of putting a gateway locally and then have the devices register against the gateway, but that's not SIP gateway, right? And that's adds infrastructure, that adds costs, adds administrative overhead. Not something I would probably recommend to do. Teams native phones might be the answer there.
Man, look, I'll tell you, my team said the same thing, and I'm excited that the team said the exact same thing that you guys are saying, because, I was pounding my head going, I feel like I'm pretty creative sometimes, and my team is pretty creative, and so it's like, what can we do? I'm like, there's got to be something we can do here in this scenario. But you're absolutely right. I think we came up with, they're going to need some Teams native phones. Ultimately, it's like, let's find, Jason, the 4,000 Teams phones in my garage don't work either because they're just USB. But that's exactly, we need some Teams native phones for the retail location. That's exactly what we came up with. So, all right, well, good. I thought I'd ask the question there. Make sure we had it right.
Okay. Yep. A couple things to call out here. Actually, the first one's really important. No calendar capabilities with SIP gateway. Why is that important? Well, there are a lot of people who have classic conference rooms with star phones, like old Polycom Trios, things like that. Trio, 8500, 8800s, right? And so I believe the Trio is a supported SIP gateway phone, and so you can use it in that, but it doesn't come with the calendar. Why? Because a lot of people, especially coming from the Skype era, like the single click to join a meeting. And so you're not going to be able to do single click to join because you're not running a Teams client. And more importantly, in the example of a shared device license / common area phone, you don't get a calendar, right? And so that's an important one to call out, because a lot of people look to this as, we don't want to put a full Teams room system in the room. It's really just a table we sit at and jump on conference calls. Can we make use of this? And so I wouldn't recommend it. Device trade-in. Good one, Jason. Yeah, I would say exactly the same thing. let's go. And I tell customers this all the time. Look, I understand you have audio only rooms and you feel that's what they're used for. The world has kind of moved on from just audio only, right? Here we are, we're on a video with content podcast. Teams, you mentioned earlier about those Android devices. The price of those have come down. They are so affordable now to deploy a, kind of a sound bar, what they used to call collab bar style Android room system, that it's really something to think about, is like, let's bring the room into a full collaborative experience, right? And then, of course, the other thing is, of course, the 911. I mentioned this earlier. It's just important to understand, based on the device, which phones you're using and how it will be supported from 911. And we could probably have a whole call about 911 and how Teams does it and dynamic E911 and stuff. But the one thing I just want to call out is just understand that there is a difference between models and how it's supported and things that you might have to do on the back end depending how the carrier trunks are connected. Okay.
Very good. Very good. Brandon, anything to add there?
Yeah.
No, just on the Yealink question, I don't think that's possible. Yealink has their MP series for Teams native phone with the Teams firmware, and then their other series is the SIP series. So to our knowledge, and actually we did a podcast with Yealink, and I asked that very question, and he wasn't even sure if that was on a roadmap. So
no, SIP gateway is the answer right there. We'll make them work with Teams, but SIP gateway is the answer. You can make all those Yealink phones work, just not Microsoft Teams native software on them, but they work just fine as a normal phone. In fact, even the old Yealinks is on there, like the G29 or whatever it was from Yealink, like the 10 buttons on the side. We deployed that phone almost 10 years ago. And so that was pretty interesting. All right, let's keep moving on here. Configuring Teams gateway.
Okay, so we talked about this a little bit. We'll kind of go through this really quick. Of course, there's some things you want to make sure that your firewall settings are passing so you can get to the appropriate address. There are 3 addresses that the phone needs to talk to get to the SIP gateway service in the cloud. You'll see them here. We have EMEA, we have one for the Americas, and we have one for APAC. Those are Microsoft's configuration servers, or provisioning servers as we call them. And so what actually happens, I'm just going to talk really quick about this, is the phone is given that provisioning server. The phone goes up to that address and provides its MAC address. It says, hey, this is who I am. Based on the MAC address, Microsoft, our cloud, our provisioning server, can tell the make and the model of the phone. If the make and model is a supported phone with SIP gateway, guess what? We deliver down the configuration to the phone. The configuration is pushed to the phone. Once it's received, it'll do 1 or 2 reboots. It depends on the scenario. And then it comes up to the login screen. It's actually very easy once you've provided that address to the phone. So this is why we don't support every phone, right? Because we actually build the configuration for supported phones. And so that's why if you happen to have, I heard Avaya earlier on, you have an Avaya phone, it's on a SIP gateway, and you want to see if it'll never work. It won't work because when you look at a MAC address, the MAC address tells the manufacturer, model, and all sorts of other stuff. And so if it's not supported, we will just kick it out and say, sorry,
And I actually tried to fact check you just to see, not you specifically, but Microsoft, just to see, because I know we would get customers that may go take a batch of phones and try and then be upset. So I did go brick a phone just to prove the point that that's 100% true.
Yeah.
Question for you. So let's talk roadmap here for a second, because I do hear a lot of organizations. I did hear some murmurs somewhere about Mitel potentially being in that group of phones that is supported at some point. Have you heard anything like that, Doug?
I have. I've heard Mitel. I've heard Avaya. I've heard some Avaya phones might come into the mix, right? So, but I never believe it until I see it. And because it's not necessarily Microsoft that's doing all the work, right? Of course, these vendors that want to be part of, playing in this realm have to work with us, right? So there's 2 parties at play. And so both parties have to come to the table and work to get their devices in. So, I do believe that over time, you are going to see more and more vendors come into the mix because of that 300 million monthly active users, right? It's undeniable. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to sell hardware, I mean, if you want to continue to sell hardware, right, you're going to have to play nice. I mean, you just are. I mean, the biggest, I won't call it a coup, but the biggest sort of win I thought was when Cisco said, we're just going to start building our devices with our meeting room devices with Microsoft Teams built in, right? I mean, that's, you look at that. I mean, classic sort of telco organization, rooted deep in telephony, and then Microsoft, who, some people think, well, it's Skype for Business and Link. It's never been, that deep just yet, but now you take Teams and it's won. I mean, Teams is a hashtag winning, right? And so you see that by Cisco saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and go build devices that have Microsoft Teams built into them. And so everybody that's got a device that they need to sell should just build it in Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, that was actually, the Cisco thing was fascinating to me. And I know Jason out there in the audience, he's a Cisco guy, right, or from a previous life. If you had told me that Cisco would be making endpoints that work with Teams, I would have told you, whatever you're smoking, you should think about stopping. I used to always say that, Microsoft and Cisco were collaboration. They would get on a stage and pretend to play nice together. And then the second they left stage, they were at each other's throats, right? And so I think you said it best. The fact that Cisco is making stuff to work with Teams, they see that they don't have a choice. The only way they're going to stay relevant is to play nice with us. And you could argue that they have a common entity, or a common enemy, right? That pesky company with the Z out there. So it's awesome. It's awesome that we see it.
It is absolutely. All right, let's go. Configuring your Teams gateway.
Configuring's easy. We're not going to go through this. I'm not going to talk PowerShell. Of course, everybody can read the screen. If you look at the top picture, SIP devices can be used for calls. This is actually part of a calling policy. So every user or every device that is configured for Teams Phone actually has to have a policy. By default, they all get the global policy. That has to be flipped on. Once you flip that on for the policy, anybody with that policy can now have a phone registered against them. A SIP phone registered against them. That's it.
I love this. Simple. I love how simple this is. This is just crazy simple, right? You go to the policy, you toggle a button over here, and you're ready to roll. That's amazing.
Yeah. You can also, by the way, bring it in via MAC address of the devices and stuff like that. That's what the other thing. But it's really so easy. And the best part about it, and there's actually a video, though I don't think we should play the video because it's just kind of, it just kind of shows what the phone does when it logs up, to be honest. But the best part about it is you're still authenticating as a user, right? At the end of the day, when the phone gets done, it has a little picture of Teams. It'll give you a web address. It's Microsoft.com device login, right? You go to that, you put in the alphanumeric code that the phone provides to you. And then if you require multi-factor authentication, you're going to have to do multi-factor authentication. If you allow the user because they're on their network, you don't have to. It will follow the same security policies as the user logging in, and it just connects to the account. So it's really, really easy.
And one thing I'll say, Doug, and you've got the note changing too, and the short code link, the aka.ms, that at least for my device, it's already changed. That's the link I was prompted to go to just 2 days ago.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Makes it so much easier if you got a swivel chair from your phone to your computer, and maybe you don't have direct view. It's easier to remember that URL.
Yeah, yeah.
The only thing it is. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish that.
No, I was just done. I was just going to say, yeah, it's super easy. Go ahead.
I just want to call out that for those of you that have worked on or are working, and Jason, you as well, I mean, from a Cisco perspective, worked on devices or systems to take devices and what you'd have to, I mean, just from a configuration perspective, I mean, even if you were working on a newer aged ShoreTel or MyTel, it's nowhere near as simple as get to the global policy or get to the policy and flip a button on and you're ready to roll. Like it's just astonishing how simple this is. If you're a Cisco person, I'm going to talk to the crowd here for just a second. If you're a Cisco person and you're managing a Cisco infrastructure or an Avaya infrastructure or MyTel infrastructure, if you're managing a system, there's so much more that you can accomplish, I think, in a platform like this, because I think you'll be able to take your skill set from a technology perspective and go, and we talked about this with Jason, and you can go learn new skills in deploying communication services for your organization that bring more productivity into the fold than just the telephone or dial tone, versus spending 20 minutes dinking with something like this when you've got a toggle button now that you can go switch on in Microsoft Teams. Yay, Microsoft Teams. Okay, sorry, had to do that.
Yeah,
All
no
right.
worries. We're going to skip over this. This is the video. It just kind of shows how the phone registers in. Let's talk about I know we don't have a whole lot of time left. Let's talk about the analog adapters. We talked about this, why it's so exciting, because now we can bring in analog ports into a solution without direct routing, right? Direct routing is great. It's awesome. It works fantastic, but you have to configure SBCs. Anybody who works in telephony knows SBCs are not exactly the easiest thing to configure. They can be pretty complex, telephony tools, right? And so that's why a lot of organizations love calling plans. Operator Connect is coming increasingly popular because it's like direct routing without having to work with the cross connect of an SBC. So, but ATAs, and if we kind of jump to the next slide, now we're starting to bring in, you don't need a full SBC, you only need an ATA to get those analog devices. By the way, just to be clear, the FXS ports on an ATA. You can buy ATAs with FXS and FXO. Make sure the FXS, S stands for station. Station provides voltage. That's what powers the phone. And so those are the ones you want. And so here's the thing I want to call out. And I left this slide in here for a reason. Fax. One of the things that, I'm going to give a little history lesson about fax with Microsoft. Microsoft supported fax. They always viewed it as a messaging protocol. Had nothing to do with voice. Link, Skype for Business, Teams has never been a fax solution. They always aligned it to Exchange. Figured email is a message, fax is a message. Well, back in 2010, this was even before the cloud, right? Or back, maybe the cloud was called BPOS then, right? They announced that they're going to stop support for fax integration to Exchange Server, right? Why? Because they felt eFax was the future. And so here we are, jump ahead 13 years later, we have the same stance. We don't support fax. What we say is bring in an eFax service that does SMTP into Exchange Online, right?
Mhm.
So what do you tell somebody that has fax machines? Right? Because tell that to a law firm, tell that to anybody in the medical field, tell that to those
government
industries,
agencies, local government agencies, right? It's
mortgage industries, right? Banking, yeah. And so we have a lot of customers that say, well, we'll just use SIP Gateway. And so what I'm here to tell you is, could you maybe get it to work? Possibly. Is it supported? Absolutely not. Do not do it. Because if it has problems, Microsoft support is not going to help you, and that's where we rely on partners like G12 to have solutions.
Little plug.
There we go.
A little plug there. It's true though. I mean, all of our, our fax to mail solutions, our device solutions. It's funny that you think about these devices. We do so much fax to mail, or eFax. I won't use that because it belongs to somebody else. But so fax to mail solutions, we use that predominantly. But when you go into organizations, some of these larger organizations have spent, tons and tons of money on these multifunction machines, right? They're big, and they've got, their distribution to their endpoints or to their end users in files in that platform. And they've got it, it's central to how they operate. And so having these audio codes devices, we use them as well, not connected to Teams, obviously, but connected to our faxing solution so that we can enable those devices external of Teams, obviously, from that perspective. But no, you just need them. And it's something that, just a quick note, when we started G12 in 2011, we thought, wow, do we really need to support fax? We can just do this, this eFax. So we really need to support fax. And, here we are again, 13 years, 12 years later. And we have a lot of fax customers, and they still use them, and you just can't pull it away.
Yeah. No, I think you guys have the right approach. That's the best way to go. If you have the right licensing with Microsoft, you even get universal print, right? And so you can print to something where you're not even in the location where the printer is, right? You can print across the web. And so why not just get those facts into your inbox and stop worrying about the communication path inside of a voice solution, right?
Yep,
And so
exactly.
this is essentially kind of the last slide that I really wanted to kind of end it with here, at least on this topic. And so here are the ATAs that are supported. There's actually one other company. I do have one or two more slides after this we can talk to. So AudioCode, Cisco, and Poly, very interesting names because we've heard them several times here today, right? And so they support, probably the most popular of these would probably be the media packs from AudioCodes. They're all over the place. Matter of fact, just before the call, I was looking on eBay because I wouldn't mind to buy like a used one just to play with because it's just be kind of neat. I don't have an ATA, but yeah, you can. The great thing about these is SBCs can be pretty expensive when you configure them with certain amount of ports and whatnot. ATAs are much more affordable. So this was a huge step forward for us. And then if we could just jump to one of the next few slides there, one of the algo slides. Yeah, this is kind of configuration stuff. Jump down a little bit. My apology, right here. I just saw the algo. Yeah.
There you go.
So let's talk about Algo. So Algo is another company who recently just got certified for SIP Gateway. Algo is known for a couple of things. They're known for paging systems, right? So they're kind of the base element inside of a paging system. They also do some stuff specific to like door alarms, gate alarms, things along that line. And so we are expanding beyond just the capabilities of just doing analog to like paging. And so there are solutions out there. And this one comes up quite a bit and customers don't know what to do. How do we get our camera that's out at the front of the building when the UPS or FedEx guy wants to deliver a package and he rings the doorbell and his video comes up? Can we control that with Teams? You can. Companies like Algo have products that can integrate, and they're leveraging the same SIP gateway solution to provide that. So it's really, really exciting. We're seeing the expansion beyond just voice and collaboration. It's starting to bring all of these elements in. So
I'm smiling only. Hold on before you wrap it up there, Doug. I'm smiling because Brandon, how long ago was it that we had this discussion about Algo and paging adapters and Microsoft Teams SIP Gateway? How long ago was that, Brandon?
Oh, it's maybe a few months, and I think we made a friendly bet that
we just talked.
Are you talking about today's?
Yeah, I'm talking about today's call.
Okay.
Like we talked about Algo and paging gateways, and we talked about this literally today on a tech call today.
Yeah. So to put it in context, though, I think it was like 3-4 months ago where this conversation came up, and we made a friendly bet that it wouldn't be long before we saw Algo's name certified with Microsoft. And then of course, to Garcia's point, just right before our stream, we were talking about some customer asks around alarming lines.
Yeah, I had a customer recently that when I spoke to them, they said point blank, if you can't give us a solution that we can open the gate outside our warehouse, then we're done with this discussion. And Algo came to the rescue. So it was perfect.
It's such and this is what I love talking. I love having this discussion, Doug, especially out on a public forum. I mean, we did this with Jason as well, but this is great because the solutions that you guys are solving for are solutions that we solve for every single day and had as a recovering UC provider, right? Where we had, did the same thing, but we basically, in Microsoft Teams, we know we need to solve for these problems because we see this in our customer base, right? And we see this in net new customers and you think you want to just go in and just, hey, we can just do your phone service. Well, there's so much that's attached to the phone system, right? That they've, kind of built out. And so having a solution for all this, I mean, it's great to see the Algo thing certified because it is. I mean, we see that as paging adapters all day. I mean, every car dealer, every whatever, they all have overhead paging solutions, big yards for whatever you may have. I mean, if you think about the yellow machinery that's out there, what's the Caterpillar guys, big, massive paging systems out in their big yards and stuff like that. Right. So we see it all the time. And so having the solutions that we keep continuing to pile into Microsoft Teams to fulfill all the components that you need to service off of a phone system is fantastic. Like this is just giddy. I could be
it really
nerd,
is.
but this is fun.
No, I'll give you a way I nerded out. This actually happened with the same customer. Another requirement they had is they wanted paging out of the phones on the desk, right? So, in other words, in certain parts of their building, they didn't have speakers installed for paging. The paging was out in the warehouse, in the office. They used to use the desk phones, and they're like, how do we do this? Teams doesn't seem to do this, and we don't want to go buy a bunch of Teams phones. And actually, frankly, that's one of the things that's still being developed. Well, guess what? Algo can actually hand off zone paging to the native zone paging capability in a VVX phone.
Ah, there we go. So you can
Yeah.
oh gosh, what's it using on the phone? Is it the algo that's breaking it out, or is it the Polycom phone that's taking it off of different man, what's it called, Brandon? When
Yeah,
you've got the different ED sections, IP sections.
Yeah, you can build the sections inside of the phone. So you can build zones, right? And then somehow the algo, you can configure algo to find those endpoints on the network. And then based on, I don't know if it's based on IP or why. Again, I didn't deploy it, but we did talk to somebody from algo, and they said, yeah, if they're on VVX phones, if they're using SIP gateway with those phones, then guess what? That paging capability, the native poly paging is in there, and algo can leverage that to use the speakers. So it's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Doug, boy, Brandon, do you have any final words? Because I'm going to start the wrap up. But man, this has been a super cool episode. Just all the technical sort of, SIP gateway components and discussion points are just really diving into solutions. I mean, it's what you live every day. It's what we live every single day. And Jason listening out there is what we do every single day. And it's exciting just to kind of talk through it and walk through it with you guys and just go, we're literally on the same team. I mean, this is what we do. We're like, you was doing the same job. It's very cool. I love this stuff.
Yeah. And my parting thoughts are, it's always fun to see how serendipitous, if you will, the timing of things is with Microsoft, where we get put into this business case scenario, and it's just ironic the timing of Microsoft when they come out and say, oh, look, now you can do algo, and it just works.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, everyone, that's episode 20 wrapped up with Microsoft's very own Doug Kline. Doug, I want to thank you for taking an hour. Don't you leave after we go offline either, Doug. Stay put right there, buddy. I want to thank you for taking an hour with us to chat with LinkedIn and LinkedIn users. Lots of comments there to go chat about and things like that. So again, we appreciate Microsoft, your time, and Doug, your time and putting all this together. These are slides that you took the time to put together. So we certainly appreciate all the effort. That's it, everyone. That's episode 20. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions for Doug, any questions for us, send us a comment. We'll make the PowerPoint presentation available for everyone to take home with them a little later today. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great afternoon. Have a great Friday, a great weekend. Brandon.
Have a great weekend. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.